Talk Tuesday. Yes, if it's Tuesday, we're going to talk about bike stuff. Bike stuff in my stand, some tools behind me, and then we'll have a little sit down and talk about the industry, latest gossip, whatever, the crashing of crashings or the benefits and the wins and all those things in between. But anyway, thank you for hanging out with me. And if you haven't been to one of these lives before or watching on the replay, I basically feature a bike or what I'm working on that current week and some other things I have been working on in addition to tech tips and AMA. Ask me anything and we'll just kind of go along and see where it takes us down the rabbit hole. But this opportunity gives you a chance to hang out inside of a back of a shop and see what the real experience is when you are sitting in the back of the shop working on bikes and our jibber jabber and that kind of thing. So therefore it gives you those insights of just to take the mystery out of what the hell we do in the background, right? In any case, well, thanks for coming in and hanging out. And once we'll get going here, get a few people, we'll start diving into this bike here. I do have to apologize. I'm recovering from a cold, so hopefully I won't be doing too many coughs or any of that. Trying to do less of a distraction. A little short breath here and there, so I'll pace myself during this review. The first part of the segment of these, I basically go over the bike itself, and thanks again for joining us here at Shop Talk Tuesday. This gym I did feature in one of 4 other bikes that I featured. Was going to dive into the project of last week on the Shop Tuesday. And this is the last leg of it, and we're going to go into that details here momentarily. Morning, Joe. Hope you're staying warm, buddy. Thank you for jumping in. Happy New Year's to you. I'm looking very forward into 2025. Got some things in the works that are just finally firing off and going the right direction. And kind of like when you find that secret sauce of whatever business or life balance you find and get, you're just going to run with it. So who knows what will happen at the end of the year? Hopefully it's a lot more successes than failures, but thanks, Joe, for chiming in. And looks like you're making some pretty cool paddles there. If you haven't watched Joe's channel, it's pretty kind of unique. He has paddles and then he does bike stuff, which is kind of cool. Anyway, we all have multiple hobbies and things we like to do and what we have to do, and hopefully what you have to do is something that you like to do, like in my case. So, wow, that's kind of a long way of saying I love my job. In any case, and all right, Brad, we have in the house. Happy New Year's to you. Thank you for watching my channel. It makes you guys that makes this happen. Because if it wasn't for you guys enjoying the content I'm creating, this wouldn't hardly go anywhere. It would have been just what the initial pilot is just to provide insights on what I do to validate on the products I was bringing to market. That's how this all started. Then it became a community, and then it became like, holy crap, this is weird. So in any case, thank you. I love it. It's very fun to do something like this because I've been in the industry for 35 years. And when you do anything for 35 years, it gets kind of, I don't know, boring or repetitive. And when you find a new outlet to be able to share what you're passionate about and kind of just does the reinsurgence of your own vibe of like, I love doing this. Let me show you. Oh, that's a good question. And you go down those rabbit holes and I love it. It's kind of gives me the opportunity of being in a shop atmosphere, talking to people, working on bikes, and getting those insights and having a community without having to have the whole brick and mortar store and a whole nine yards. So that makes it even more, in a way, more sane for me to be able to verbalize and blurb out all the stuff that's pent up. And you guys kind of save me from doing that, just verbal diarrhea on my wife all the time. So, I mean, she's like heard enough about bike shop stuff, so giving me an outlet to do it, which is completely awesome. Fat tire biker. Yeah, thanks for coming in. Talking about predictions. Yeah, we're going to be talking about on the second half of this about what 2025 is shaping up. and good insights that you brought in your neck of the woods. It is very sad to see a lot of shops fail, especially when it's a smaller community. It does kind of hit more home when you're in a bigger city like metropolitan areas. It's less noticeable, but when you're in a smaller town and you lose a couple of those main stables, it is a pretty big impact. But yeah, we're looking forward to some crazy stuff. And awesome. I'm not, I may have to butcher this. Like, Happy New Year's to you. It's the Summerton? Anyway, those up in the north, bike mechanics don't want to invade you. I just want to throw that out there. We're happy, most of us, it's whatever. But anyway, appreciate your cycling communities up there. Through my work history through Retail Toolkit, which was a software program for bike shops initially, I did have a couple clients that was in the Canada market. And really cool. I mean, it's just really cool what you guys do. You have some really good companies. It's very interesting how you have to navigate through your markets up there versus what we have to navigate. It's just kind of crazy. But I won't go into that too much. But thank you for joining us. And Happy New Year's. New Year's Eve to everybody. I want to kind of just, show what I have going on here. And this is if you chimed in last week, I had 4 mountain bikes. Can't use my fingers right. I got 4 mountain bikes. And I was going to do some part stealing, frame cleaning. Well, I'll show you what I've got on those. And then this is my last leg of the project. It took me this long to get around to this because, got Christmas and the holidays and the weekend. I don't know. It just got kind of busy on me. And it is food for thought for next year. It's like, I need to cut out about half of the stuff I'm trying to do in December because I'd only be lucky to get half of a quarter of basically what I was anticipating and trying to get done. So, any case, all right. All right, let's dive into this. Got a few guys joining in. Awesome, thanks again. I do have a little bit of a cold that I'm coming off of, so hopefully I won't have a cough fit or anything. If not, I'll mute my mic if I can. But I'm actually feeling a lot better, so therefore I was like, we're going to do this. We got a lot of stuff to talk about, a lot of cool things to go over. And thank you for making this channel happen. Like I mentioned before, if you haven't been here before, this is basically a Shop Talk Tuesday to give you the insights of living inside of or visiting inside of a bike shop, what basically happens when we're jibber jabbering and doing our whole thing in the back. And sometimes we get sidebarred on conversations on either tools, parts, movies, whatever, dating life, you know it. It can go down a rabbit hole like any kind of scenario, but that it gives you the insights of what kind of happens in the bike shop. And also I'll give you a little industry, my perspective on industries of the last 35 years of going through it and seeing where we're up on the cusp of 2025. Allude to our last video that dropped on Sunday, which kind of blew up more than I anticipated. So we're going to talk about that. A lot of comments. Boy, a lot of people are really opinionated about this, which is good for engagement, which is awesome. But so going back to last week, we were looking at, looking last week, I had 4 bikes. I had a Klein, which is full suspension, was hanging over in the corner now. I stole its headset and front suspension, and I was anticipating putting it on a Klein hardtail versus a full suspension. And I also had a Crease King headset. Well, I made videos, or I'm shooting videos of doing all these individually, so at some point you'll be able to see those in more detail, but just a quick rundown is, this is the one I started with. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna steal this off of the full suspension Klein and put it on the hardtail, and then when I put it on, I found out pretty damn quickly that the steer tube was just a little too shy, a little too short. Nobody wants a short steer tube. Let's just put it that way. So unfortunately, that fork is either going to go on another bike or I'm just going to sell it separately out. And we're in a situation right now where building complete bikes and selling them as a complete can be a little more expensive to do. So as a business perspective, some of this stuff is going to be parted out, and it does give great opportunities for those who want to buy a frame similar to this and do some crazy fun stuff. If they have already a 26er mountain bike and a damaged, crash, break, or whatever, they can find themselves a new frame. A lot of the times it's that case, they already have parts, or maybe they want to get really creative and convert a bike frame like this, where it does have the old school disc brake mounts, where I've seen a couple of these converted into gravel bikes with 650B wheels, with a 650B fork. And a couple of those videos, the bikes turned out really awesome. Keep in mind though, when you do that, if you ride a large like I do on a mountain bike, if you convert this to a 650B, that makes the bike a little bigger. It turns up to like a size and a half bigger. So do your homework if you're gonna do that conversion. So on this one, I would probably do for my size, probably a medium, so it doesn't feel too long, because the top tubes on mountain bikes are a lot longer. And when you try to convert that to equation to a gravel or road, therefore it gets a tricky bit. But I did the whole detailing on this guy, it turned out very beautifully. This has a two-tone. I did the whole Adams polishes, ceramic coating, all that. Also did the tricky bits of pre-threading some cables in there, so whoever gets this frame could do the process of threading those cables through with hopefully not too much horrible headache, because to a good side note on these Klein frames, mountain, road, or otherwise, if it has an internal brake cable, stop. This is where, if this cable drops inside this tube here, let's just give you a little bit closer look. When this drops inside the tube here, this little grommet, which I'll feature in the video, but this little grommet here is press fitted in when they're assembled. So yeah, I found one bike once that this wasn't in all the way. So whoever installed it originally never pressed in there. So if you hit that brake hard enough, it would have shoved in there and you would have lost brake power, which is scary as hell. So that gets pressed in. But the thing is, sometimes there's a sleeve in there, and there was back in the manufacturing, or back in the day when these were assembled, but you never know what happened in the interim of how many times this frame has been bought and sold, right? So you want to make sure this has the cable all the way through it. And then what you do is you cut that off and you put a sleeve through, then you can line your new cable through it. Well, if that drops inside and you can't, that grommet needs to come out. Or maybe you can try to do the vacuum cleaner, vacuum thing or something to try it, or get lucky with a magnet in there, maybe. But most of the time you have to re-pop this rivet out, or the stop out, to be able to get the cable through and do it. Horrible nightmare. And you also will scar up this beautiful paint job in that area too. So if you're looking at a Klein frame to buy, just a frame itself floating out there and it doesn't have in there, ask the owner of it and see if they can have the cable put through first before purchasing it, because you don't want to be doing that. I can guarantee you. Been there, done that. The down tubes are not too bad for the shifters, because you can basically slide it with a magnet to get that cable to pull through. So that's a little tech tip on that. Internal routing, I mean, it's not new. It's been around for a while, and some of the old internal routing was a nightmare back then. So case in point. So that was the first guinea pig that I tore into. And then we ran into the Bontrager frame. This one I was hoping to revamp the fork. And the fork on this guy, these were proprietary from RockShox. This is a 1-inch. It had a 1-inch threaded. But I went to go try the fork. It is so corroded inside of the fork, which is this guy here. When I started pulling out, it's all rusted inside. And when I started pulling out the elastomers, what were elastomers, they disintegrated. It was like one hot mess. I couldn't get to the bottom to clean it out. So this became too much of a time suck. So basically just gonna be selling the frame in itself. I was hoping to have the fork on there, but it's just not gonna work that way. Did the same thing, ceramic coating, and it turned out, I mean, even though it had a lot of chips and scratches on it, still turned out pretty amazing. very, very shiny in spots, and I was able to, you know, where it had the chips and a little bit of rust, I was able to buff it to the point where you got the chromoly sparkling, and then with that ceramic coatings, I'm going to protect that steel. It was super corroded in the bottom bracket area, which I cleaned out as much as I could. So I still probably will do a little bit of wire brushing in there to try to really, you know, neutralize that rust. But that led to this one where I stole the brakes and the shifters and brake levers to put on this guy. And it is vintage. So you're looking at cantilever brakes, which is going to go onto the cantilever fork. And also, and this is, you know, the housing stop, cable stop is a true indication of that. I'll clean this up. If I need parts, I do have another one of those forks that's actually still in shape. If I do need to switch out elastomers or anything like that to update it, we're good to go. So, in you know, that case, even if worst case scenario, that one is 1/8", I can swap out the whole fork if need be. That is vintage to this bike, which is very interesting because the 970, the 990, and the 930, and the 920 from Trek was their steel line of the early 90s to mid 90s. And this is prior to Bontrager, Klein, Gary Fisher, and all that. This is right on the cusp of that. So it has all the Trek bits on it, like the system stuff, like the System 1, System 2, that kind of thing. Even the bar ends. I think these are like a System 2 or 3, which they were playing with those for a couple of years. Top tube, on the top tube cable routing. That's where they're doing the top pull for the front derailleur, which was kind of unique. So not none of the down tube stuff. The hopes to keep it all clean. Sorry. The hope to keep it all clean so the cables don't get contaminated. But the problem is with this is the cables scratch up the top. And they did like sleeves, they did little donuts. None of that works. I'm going to clean it up and I'm going to put some protective tape on top to keep it from scratching up, that kind of thing. But this has like, I'm trying to remember the name of this. It wasn't like, it's kind of a root beer color, but more reddish. And it has like a gold decaling. I meant to look it up before I jumped on today to see what that color, it's like probably a 92, 93. Yeah, Trek, and you can probably tell by the head badge what vintage it is. And these were still made in Wiley, Wisconsin. They just didn't move productions until 2007. So these were definitely USA made. And it had Shimano componentry with XT with LX, and I think that was a year before XTR hit the big market, something like that. Excuse me, just double checking. So yeah, and they did a little gusseting job underneath the top tube here, but not the down tube. And that's where the Bontragers have on that frame the gusseting on the down tube as well to kind of beef it up. So they're still trying to keep it light-ish. I mean, back then it's still, these were pretty chunky, but needless to say, it's still, once I get the LX brakes, I mean, check it out. It's like the LX Canties, I couldn't believe it. I'm going to try to find inserts. The brake pads need to be replaced. I'm going to try to find inserts to match those. Yeah, so it'll be totally matchy for the brakes. And it had Diacomp brake levers, which is very vintage. And this one had a newer shifter on it, but ironically, the Bontrager frame had the same X-ray grip shifters. And these are prior to SRAM buying grip shift and Avid. So, and also RockShox. So SRAM is based, I think their main offices are down in Colorado Springs, which is south of me about an hour and a half, 2 hours. And they have like 5 or 6 different companies they've acquired over the years. Grip shift is one of them. You won't see, there's really not new grip shift. I mean, they do make replacements like this here, but this is the 8-speed original. So I'll take these apart and clean it. I will do a separate video on taking these apart, switching the cable out and cleaning it, because it is a whole different kind of a world. I remember sitting in, back in the 90s, we had a grip shift clinic that we sat in for like 2-3 hours, learning how to loop the cable and deal with the Snoopy nose and doing all those adjustments on it, but it still works. just fine. They did have I did have personally had a bike on a bike of these that I raced in the 90s, and they worked really great. The year before, they made it clear, and the clear broke down in UV, so they cracked. These guys are, well, maybe one of the reasons, but the smoked one is the one you're looking for that will hold up a little bit longer, and they're still holding up for today, which is kind of a wow. I mean, considering they're mostly plastic pieces and it's still holding up close to 30 years later, that's impressive, right? Any case, so we're gonna do the vintage pieces with the brake levers and the brakes. And the drivetrain is XT with LX front, so it matches the brakes. This does have a Sagoni crank, I believe, which is still in that period piece. This is where they were starting to compact those chain rings to be smaller. So you have a wider range, so basically for climbing. They realized that in the early 90s that, you know, Trek is based out of Wisconsin, and they were talking to their dealers where in Colorado, for example, they had these things called mountains. And they're like, we can't ride that here. So there lies where the triple compact, more gear, lower range, you know, gears were starting to be put on bikes for mountain bikes. And then that alluded to the triples for road bikes. And we were doing a lot of conversions in the early 90s on road bikes from a 2 to a triple to help, you know, people to do ride the Rockies and the triple bypass and all those events that are in the mountains, which we're mostly started off with mountain componentry like the Dior DX. And I do have a video in my library. It's the 1420, which is one of their first production road bikes with a triple. And then Shimano got a lieu of that and finally made a componentry. And they finally made like the 105 and Ultegra a triple. And it took them a long time to do Dura-Ace as a triple, which that was a hot mess. We won't go there. But anyway, any case, looking at this bike, the condition is a little dirty, but the frame, I think, you know, has some garage chippage. There's no major damage that I can see so far. But when I do the initial cleaning, when I do the initial detailing and correction of the paint, and also the polishing and also the ceramic coating, that makes me go over the frame very, very close and personal about 7 or 8 times. And that really will make sure that if there's anything that's missed on the first round or two, I'll catch it later on. So the frame is inspected several times. This particular paint is pretty cool because it's kind of like a colored clear coat. It has more of a depth to it. They do have, it looks like looking at the chips here, there's like a black paint as the initial clear paint, and then they clear coat it with the red, so that gives it the darker color versus more of a brighter, I would say root beer-ish. It's kind of a burnt red, but in the sun, it's more red, and it's really, really, really pretty. It definitely is going to be a standout, and once this is all vintaged out and all ready to go, it's going to be one stellar bike. That being said, if you go on a little group ride, either like gravel ride or whatever, show up on this thing, people are like, wow, that's a classic. You know, they're going to be identify that, especially if they've been around. So there is some dirty areas about the cables and so forth. This is going to get all new cables and housing. Other nice little vintage details that they have the stamp T and the actual dropout in the back, which is really cool because, you know, a lot of mass manufacturing bikes don't have details like this, like a little, you know, you can see that T from Trek. Sometimes they'll put the sizing on the serial number on the bottom here. So I'll have to clean that up and see. And this is where the scaries are, right? Like underneath all this stuff. See how bad it's chipped up. So it looks like it's been ridden. It's probably ridden on a lot of dirt roads and what have you. That's where you get a lot of chip and mucky muck that comes up. And that gusset, you can see that welded in here. So this was pretty well built. And this is when they were building bikes to last. And that's where the crazy thing is now, is the industry's gone to a lot of consumable, expensive pieces. Case in point, this house we live in, it was new, a new production, new home. And all our neighbors all had the same, it came with appliances from, I won't say the brand, but it starts with a G, and ends with an E. Anyway, I swear, the refrigerator, the dishwasher, and their microwave died with all in the same week. They had like timers built in to blow up, like within 3 to 4 years of owning and using it, they all died. So we're going down to the appliance store doing a hat trick on appliances. Well, that's where I'm alluding to that is bike manufacturing just started kind of going that direction and going with a whole bunch of last 10 years, all these different bottom brackets. You got to have all these different tools to do all these different bottom brackets. You just can't have one. So they've gotten rid of all the universal fitting and pieces. In this particular era, from I would say the late 80s to probably 2007, within that, I would say almost 20 years, you only needed one bottom bracket tool and one headset tool, and you know, with your standard tools that you have in the shop, you can do 90% of the work without having to buy too many specialty tools. Now it's almost every year you have to have a new specialty tool to work on that. And for the new mechanics that have to deal with all of that, it's like, man, you got to go through a bucket full of tools. And these are not cheap. We're talking about 20, 30 bucks per bottom bracket fitting. And I just recently bought 6 of them just to make sure I'm replacing some old ones that are old damage and to modernize my kit with a new Torx wrench. I have the smaller one, but this is the one that goes up to, I think, 60 Newton meters. So this is what you have to use on bottom brackets and cranks and stuff like that. So the older one I have is just, it was older, I needed to get a new one. Took advantage of some sales and spent another, don't tell my wife, I spent another, yeah, 350 bucks on tools, just on the fittings, the bottom bracket tools. That's it, you know. And that was at discount with 20% off, just nuts. Any case, but anyway, I have the tool. But being a business person, yes, it is a write-off. I'm lucky for that, but you still have to pay for them. And what I do is, of course, I leverage my points card, so all the shipping and buying and stuff like that, I save up that money that through points, that 2% through the business card, to wait to leverage Christmas time tool buying. So I learned that last year. I was like, oh, this is the only time I'll be able to get park tools on sale with a company that's going to have a blanket 20% off. Thank you, 365 Cycles. You saved me a whole bunch of money. Although I did spend a whole bunch of money. Anyway, yeah, that goes with par with the course, right? Yeah, the Two Bicycles Shop. Yeah, thanks for joining us and thanks for chiming in. Bontrager, yes. Bontrager partnered with Trek. I mean, we were a Trek dealer, so I kind of was more intimate. We do have, I mean, I still have the Bontrager banner in the back corner there you can see. Talking about that for just a side note, Bontrager was a steel maker back in the Santa Cruz area, and he was making these awesome mountain bike frames. He's actually from the motocross motorcycle era, and he is a highly educated individual. I didn't realize how old he was. I mean, I thought he was like closer to my age when he was picked up by Trek, but he's apparently in his 70s, I think. So he was, when he was joined Trek, he was in later, like in his 30s or 40s. So he's been with Trek for a long time, but initially they did bring out a couple lines of mountain bikes and just to see how they did, and we were a Bontrager dealer, which we were really cool, love the story, great Kool-Aid, you know, compared to the Trek bikes that we have. Then we also carried Schwinn's were starting to fuddle out. I think they were gone then, but we also carried GT at the time. So it was a great little mix. So when somebody walked in and were looking at a mountain bike and like, well, try the Trek out, try the GT out, and try this. You know, also we had carried Mongoose. We had try a Mongoose out, and that's before Mongoose became a department as well as Schwinn and GT. In any case, and yeah, they're a little stout, but you had a lot of little features to talk about them, which was kind of cool. And yes, he had so many ideas on the drawing board for so many different things like wheels and components and so forth. So once they came to line, that's all he went into. So that's where you saw Bontrager pretty much on every bit and piece on the Trek line as their accessory cell. A lot of companies do this, and they can actually take that accessory company line like Bontrager and put them in various other companies. One was REI. just a side note. Well, REI still carries some of the Bontrager stuff that's being phased out, but now they're carrying Trek accessories in addition to, and Electra bikes, which is not electric bikes. Electra is a cruiser line that Trek acquired about 10, 15 years ago. And then they're carrying, they can do the same thing there. So they're doing the same thing what they did back in the 90s, but in a much smaller scale. But thank you for reminding me of that. Yes, we had those insurgents of changes through the 90s, and that's where, this bike, where the system stuff, it really wasn't like a selling point. It's not like people were coming in and like, I'm looking for those System 3 bar ends. I mean, they may have gotten featured in a mountain bike magazine or something, but most likely not. But it wasn't cool and niche enough. So when Bontrager got his name put on a whole bunch of stuff and actually it designed and revolutionary, pushed a lot of that tech forward on parts and so forth and wheels specifically, there you got some good stuff. So yeah, that was definitely a win for Trek for that kind of thing. And they definitely leveraged it. I mean, they're a business that definitely leveraged those things for sure. Absolutely. All right. Yeah, Pancho, thank you for joining us. Yeah, blast from the past. Yeah, I have that for. I mean, it is weird because I now have 3 of them in the shop. I mean, they must have produced the it was called Quadra, not the Magna. The Quadra 21R was like one of the first mass-produced forks put on everything. It had a little more travel than the first-gen forks. This will put you throw you back. I don't have one in stock, but I do remember them. Is Trek's first front suspension box forks they went with was from Showa, I think it was, and it was Black Diamond and another one. They were actually for the like motorcycle industry. They got these forks made custom for Trek. And I don't think I've ever saw those on any other models of bikes out there except for the Trek. So, and it was kind of funny because, oh, cool suspension. Yeah, you got this give. And it was like this much, right? This much. And you added like 4 pounds to your bike. I mean, yeah, hindsight anyway. Then they had the goofy soft ride, multi-linkage stems, which was too much travel. You felt like you're going to go over your bars. They also had the swoopy back thing. This is before all the full suspension things really kicked in. And fast forward today, which really makes you laugh, is you look at Redshift, which is cool stuff. And they're a lot less aggressive, but they added the front suspension portion to the stem, so you can convert that so you don't have to spend that $5,000 for a specialized Future Shock, whatever, Roubaix. And then they have like the seat post shock that has a little give. They can do adjustments to it too. It's really, really high, more tech, taking the old school stuff, but made it more relevant for today. So check out that stuff. I know it's expensive, but hey, if you really love your bike and you just want a little more of a give and you're willing to spend the $300 for a stem or a new bar or something like that, that might be something to take a look at for sure on those. Doug's in the house. Thank you for joining us. Yeah, they had the rubber inserts on these guys. I think I have one still opened up. Yeah. So these were kind of like a elastomer stack. And then you can switch these out to different colors for different compressions. And then there was a company called Speed Spring that came out. Then you switch that out with a Speed Spring, and then it really felt like a jumping out of bed, like pew, that kind of thing. Yeah, the travel on these, how did I look at it? It's probably like 1.25 inches. Not much at all, but they kind of look cool. I mean, the bright yellow. I mean, RockShox really did a number. Also, Specialized partnered up too, and they did a Future Shock or whatever it was, and it had its own colors. So the bright, vibrant colors, like, ooh, you got a full suspension bike, a front suspension bike. You must have money, because I mean, these were like $1,000, back in the day when they were new, that kind of thing, and comparative, the rate of inflation and all that, it was probably your $3,000 back then, we were comparatively making then to now, but. In any case, steel is one of those comeback materials. It comes back in fashion over the years, but it does have a very valid place. I mean, it has more of a supple ride than aluminum. It made some chromoly frames super light, but they get thin tubing. That's the Ritchie one I had back in the 90s. I loved it, and I should have kept it, but I didn't. And nowadays you look at, you know, the custom steel, upper end steel, like the Reynolds tubing, they're nice rides. I mean, it's more of the class look and all that kind of thing. It's more of the inexpensive, the more price savvy person that can't afford titanium. But guess what? Titanium prices on the used market, I'm seeing a lot of bikes dipping below $1,000. And these bikes, they're really decent, like Lightspeeds and Seratas, a couple Moots. But yeah, it's just one of those things that you can probably find a titanium if you're looking. At some point, that'll be your right size. And like, hey, I just want to ride that for a while. I have a customer that has a titanium Lightspeed. He's had it since the 90s, and he still rides the living hell out of it today. And it holds up. It holds up well. The frame is in real good condition. He loves how it rides. All those things. And to the fact that Lightspeed this year, 24, not yet 25, is doing a trade-in program on older titanium Lightspeeds. So if you like your Lightspeed, but you're like, want the newer one with disc brakes, through axle, that kind of stuff, or whatever, you can do a trade-in. And what they're doing is they're taking those frames and they're sending them to a charity in Atlanta. So it's kind of a win-win, like they're repurposing that old titanium, giving it to a charity in Atlanta. They're getting some inner city youth learning how to learn on bikes, get these bikes up, and they sell them, and it supports that organization. So it's kind of a cool little win-win-win. Bicycle Retailer will have that. So in an article, that's where I read it. So Bicycle Retailer, go to their website, and just type in Lightspeed and it should show up as a donation kind of thing. So it's kind of cool. It's not that they're like buying it back and reselling them, like Chuck is on their refurbished Red Barn stuff. In any case, and that's very limited as well. Okay, so yeah, pretty cool. Awesomeness to this thing. So yeah, the tricky thing, if you got something like this, is going to be a top pole cable front derailleur. Those are not as, I mean, they're still there. You can still get them, but you may not get the quality or the high level that you may want. So if you can find a used one in the LX XT range, even XTR back in the day, but you'll be limited to like 8 or 9 speed. That's something you can do. But if you're really in a pinch and you don't want to spend that much money on a used front derailleur, you can get the newer ones. And quite honestly, how often do you shift the front derailleur? It doesn't have to be the high end for the front derailleur to still do what it's supposed to do. So you can kind of be less price conscientious on the front derailleur on these. Sorry about that. But the rear derailleur is what you really want to put money in because that's going to do most of the shifting and also your shifters. So if you have decent shifters in the rear derailleur, that's going to help you out. And obviously you want good brakes. You want to be able to stop your butt from not dying. Cranksets, there's a plethora of ones. If you really want to go vintage, you can look up like Kuka cranks and find a set of those on eBay. I mean, they're still pretty damn expensive, but they all have lots of cool, funky colors and so forth. I had a pair of those on my race bike back in the day. It was fun. So yeah, you can still do some vintage trick out type things if you wanted to, but I'm trying to get this one up to pretty close to its original state of the state. This does have a cable stop also, like this here, incorporated with the actual seat clamp. So, and also I'll need this has a very inexpensive shock seat post on here. I'm gonna ditch that, just find an alloy seat post to put on there. But it does have a vintage Bontrager saddle. So, but I think it's kind of chunked up, so I might have to look for something that's a little bit better shape. Let's put it that way. So in any case, and I do have wheels. The wheels came off of the Klein hardtail, and this is a System 3 front hub from Trek with their Swami Matrix rims, stickers on the front, but it does have a XT rear. So this is where parts started getting swapped at the manufacturer level because they'll put in some lesser expensive front hubs. They didn't want to pay for the XT front hub from Shimano, but they put the XT rear hub. These were laced in Waterloo, Wisconsin through this vintage whole piece. So they were doing wheels too, putting them together. I mean, I don't think they were building the hoops, but they got all the parts and assembling there, which is like Univega is doing today. So this is the Swami Matrix rim, and they lace these up with the XT. Then they have their system hubs, which they found probably from some mass producer of parts, and just got a whole bunch of front hubs. And they had system 1, system 2, system 3, so lighter weight. And this is also when they started doing that flanged out front hub. They make it a little more stiff, supported versus the skinny this hub, which is very traditionalist. That's a Joytech hub, which is probably same manufacturer did those. There's only like a few of them. It's really kind of funny because back in the 90s, you go to the bike show, and the bike show first was in Anaheim. My parents went to that one, and they'd go to Disneyland, that kind of thing. It was part of it. And then they moved the show to Las Vegas, and it was called Interbike. And we'd go to those. I remember like it was 95 or 96 was the first time I went to a show, and it was insane. I mean, it was just, this is before internet, before you can look anything up. This is where you found out all the stuff and got to talk to all the different, part companies and all that. Well, they had like what they call, I think it was called Taiwan Alley or whatever it was, where they had like the main floor, and this was at the old Sands Casino and Convention Center, and the top floor was like about 8 football fields big. It took like 4 days to walk the thing. I mean, that's how big it was. Then they had a downstairs. That's where all the little big companies were. They'd be like a little 10 by 10 booth, and all they sold was stem caps, or other weird, bizarre things. I mean, like the bikes that pedal both ways, like they're kind of like doing this. You'd see those guys riding around. And so it's kind of a combination of prior to manufacturer shows where they all go to Taiwan now, like Trek and Specialized, they go to Taiwan and then they get all their agreements. This is all in the same kind of mix. So even if you're a small frame builder, you go to the Interbike and you talk to companies to get specs for parts and so forth for the bikes you're going to be producing for a smaller scale. Very interesting. Very, very eye-opening. Crazy. Crazy days. So I do apologize. I do have a cold. I'm coming over, and that reminds me I should probably pop in another cough drop so I'm not totally annoying you guys. Anyways. So yeah, vintage piece that puts me back in time. I remember these when we were new. We did sell a few of these. We did sell a few of the upper end, and maybe 1 or 2 of the 990s, which was the upper end. But the 970s just sold a couple. I think we actually stocked them. And then we had the 930, which was the Dior DX LX one. The 930 and the 950 was the bread and butter steel ones that we sold quite a bit of. The Trek had at the same time, I think the 7000, the 8000 was the aluminum version. And then they had the 9800 and a 9700. I don't think it was this year, maybe the year after, where they had the main tubes were carbon. Maybe it was this year. I'll have to go look at the catalog. It'll be very entertaining. But yeah, we carried a couple of the carbons, but that was the lower end ones, not the upper end with the XTs, because they were pretty expensive. For the market, you're talking about, is Parker before it became part of the Denver metro area. So it's still considered a small town ish. And therefore, majority of our clientele is more of a mom and pop location. We do have a few riders that are more upper end, but not as many as you would see today, for sure, absolutely. Carbon steel. Oh, thanks for joining us. Carbon steel, that's a good question. This one says heat-treated chromoly. It doesn't have, I've seen carbon steel before. as a sticker, and I always kind of question that. I may have to ask my buddy John Bradley, which worked at Trek in this particular period, and it's like, what do they mean by carbon steel? Is it a process? It's steel. It's still a steel. Maybe it's just a type of steel, but they're just using carbon. Trek design. Oh, this is triple butted. Ooh, heat treated. Ooh, triple butted. Well, triple butted means it's thicker here, thin, and they made it even thinner. And it's usually the main tubes. That's another thing is they did the, oh, this is True Temper. Yeah, this is True Temper OX Comp 3. So when they say, when you look at the vintage stuff, they say chromoly, such and such brand. Sometimes it's just the main tubes, which is the 3 tubes here, and the rest of the bike maybe a lesser chromoly or steel. So they would sometimes mix those materials. So when you look at the upper ends like the 970s and the 990, the whole frame was that. So anyway, a little side note on that. Hey Art, thanks for joining us. What year were 105 doing three by drivetrains? I don't know the specific year of LX, but a majority of the mountain stuff had triples in the late 80s, early 90s, to my recollection. And they had the LX triple for at least almost 2 decades. Then when they switched the LX to Dior line, and then they went to the 2x, that's when everybody went to the 2x, and they ditched that one. But I don't think you will find, you can find a LX or a 105. What was it? I'm sorry, 105. Yeah, the 105. Yeah, the 105, actually, I'm sorry. The 105, I got confused because I'm staring at a mountain bike. Sorry, cold kicking in. 105, when they went with the triple, it was probably 96, 97. You can reference that probably through a Trek catalog and see when they switched over from Dior mountain componentry. They did make 105 as the Shimano's release of Road Triple. So I would say probably mid-90s on the 105 for sure. And they carried that up, you know, till when they went to doubles and they got rid of it. So you can still, I think you can still get, you can find it 105 and a triple up to a 10 speed. And after that, they kind of went away from it. So at 11, 12 speeds, you're not going to see that, unfortunately. Oh yeah, to bicycle shop. Thanks for chiming in on the Taiwan Pavilion. That's right, business to business where the bike companies went to shop. Yeah, it was really crazy because you know you were looking. I was there to see our dealers and maybe a future dealer and parts and stuff. Of course, accessories like bags and packs and racks and stuff like that for your shop, for the showroom floor, but not OEM to put onto bikes. And that Taiwan section was just wholesale to wholesale, like it was just nuts. It was just crazy. You dip down there and you're like, I'm not in the right place. And I'm like, and we all had different badges, of course, you know. So if you were a retailer in the wrong section, they wouldn't even look at you. It was kind of like, oh, we're not talking to you. Or they'd be nice and be like, yeah, this is what we do. Anyway, weirdest experience that I had at the show was the coupler. Those guys when they came out. The coupler was where you can take a frame and then you can cut the frame, and it was this titanium coupler that you can bond to the frame, and it was like a bracket, so you could basically take your bike apart in mid-frame. And when they came out and hit market and we're at the show, I was like, let me show you my coupler. And you're like holding this weird thing, you're like, Why are you getting in my space? Like, I'm stinking hungover from the last 3 nights of being in Vegas, so why are you getting in my face? And yeah, but it was a cool concept, and actually it's really great for tandems. That's where I really found a home, because the breakdown of those tandems is smaller for transportation, and you can put them in cases and so forth. So the coupler came out of that was one of the weird experience. Hans Ray, the other one, the GT Trials rider, saw him do a little show, hopping over people and stuff on his bike. That was pretty cool. And believe it or not, I think it was Evel Knievel was there. He had like a throne kind of deal. They had like I think it was PK Ripper, was it? BMX line that had the Evel Knievel model, and they brought him back, dusted him off before he died. Got to see him. I think I got something signed by him. It was kind of weird. He didn't look like he was happy. Like, I was signed to do this thing, and I'm just going to sit here and be grumpy. But anyway, that was kind of funny. Anyway, side note. Oh, do I drink alcohol? To see me get loose. Oh boy, yeah, no, not on video, not on purpose. Yeah, you'll have to catch me at the show. Actually, I am going to go to the show. They actually brought back, well, a few years ago they brought back Cabda. And Cabda expanded to multiple shows across the nation. That's where the smaller niche show, I think, is. I haven't been to one yet. I went to the last show I went to was the last 2 Interbikes when the last one was in Reno, which was kind of a flat dud. So we have a place in Vegas. I'm like, hey, well, I'm going to take a buddy of mine that went to the bike shop. We worked at the bike shop back in the day, and we're going to go just check out the Cabda show in Las Vegas in March. So we'll be there. There you might see me cut a little loose. We'll see. We will see, for sure. Yeah. Any case, this is gonna be a fun bike to work on. It's got a lot of cleaning, detailing, ceramic coating on it. It's gonna be really cool. It does have the more modern bits. I mean, you have the 1/8" headset, so you can still get forks and headsets and all that stuff. The bottom bracket is a standard size bottom bracket, threaded, so it's not a press fit or anything like that. I'm gonna come up with a video of like the top 5 or 10 things to watch out for vintage bikes. For road, maybe some mountain, like some stuffs that are problematic, like press fit bottom brackets, which press right into the carbon, thanks Trek. Some other things like that, or the paired spoked wheels always seem to crack. Couple things just to be mindful of when you're looking for bikes, like, okay, these are the 5 things that I should not buy, or know that I'm going to be needing to replace. That kind of thing, or I'm going to be limited to doing whatever. But when you look at a frame like this, the limitations, you wouldn't be able to put disc on it without having to be cut and having a disc bracket welded on there. I've seen a lot of videos of people doing that. It can be done. Is it worth it? Question mark. But in any case, on these particular ones, you put on a nice V-brake. You're just fine, unless you really, really want disc. You can do that too. But in any case, I wouldn't do that on something like this, unless you want to convert it to like that other one, like a gravel bike, like the Klein. Or if you want to take that Bontrager and have a custom bracket welded on there. There's a couple guys out there that do frame building, and they'll do that. Locally here, Black Sheep, I think he only does titanium though, so it'd have to be a titanium frame. But you could do it. I've seen his work on some titanium conversions to a through axle with a drop or with a dismount. Beautiful work, craftsmanship for sure. Pricey, so really, if you really want to go down that rabbit hole, you can. I mean, that's actually definitely an option for sure. All right. I think I've talked to death about the 970 and the stories that comes with it and the parts that are going to be ramping up and the history pieces and so forth. So this is the part of the Talk Shop Live. I'm going to go right into we'll talk into the latest of the latest of what we're facing with 2025. So let me rearrange my, this is definitely a sit down thing. Definitely a sit down. We want to talk about this. So give me a second here to move over without trying to electrocute myself and everything in between. That kind of deal. So I'm gonna look up some stuff. Yeah, this video, the last one that dropped, was pretty interesting. I mean, I knew it was gonna be, you know, I'm not gonna say it, clickbaity-ish, but obviously that's where you get more viewers and so forth. So you kind of have to do that kind of thing. Try not to do it all too much on purpose, but a little bit of earthquake gonna lower you down, so it's not like I'm looking up at the camera. Get my better side of my chin. Get a little more lighting. So 2025, well, we had some news that popped up recently, right? Yeah, there we go, that's good. We had some news pop up recently, right, of, obviously we lost GT. Well, let's say we lost GT. GT is just basically put on hold. If you don't know GT, well, GT, I have a video on GT. A little bit of history on that. We carried GT back in the day. Seem a little far away. Let's get you closer. So we carried GT, basically a BMX line that got big, which was pretty cool back in the day. And what is interesting is they've been bought and sold a couple times over the 2-3 decades. And you know, they were trying to make the line come back to life, put them back in independent bike dealers again, that kind of thing. And the parent company that owns them is Pond Holdings, where it's one of those interesting things. Let's see. Hungover? You want to see me hungover? I'm talking about, you know, bike shop hangover. Anyway. Oh, Midwest. Are you talking about the Cabda Midwest? Maybe not this year. Maybe next year. I do have a brother that lives in Chicago, so that wouldn't be a too hard thing to do to venture. I heard the Midwest is pretty big, and I know I have some friends and shop friends in the Chicago, Wisconsin. Would be kind of fun to hang out and meet up and that kind of thing. So depends how well everything goes this year. let's go with that. Yeah. So talking about the industry and how it's gone sideways, and talking about GT and how Pond has 50 different types of cycling companies, as well as a whole bunch of other companies. They're very diverse. They own, I believe they own Lamborghini, Porsche, Audi, have workings with Volkswagen, all those kinds of, it's like a big Dutch, kind of conglomerate. If I'm not saying the proper terminology of their relation to that company, sorry, but it just seems to me they kind of own all of them, or at least they have leverage on all of them. So therefore, Pond is within, GT is within that family of bike stuff that they own. They did a couple purchases, a Durrell, and another one where they acquired Schwinn and Mongoose. So they got the bikes that are being sold to Walmart all the way to Cervelos and Santa Cruz's that are being sold to high-end shops. So they got the whole range. In addition to, they own Mike's Bikes that start out of California, and they have, I don't know, a dozen or two retail locations, if not more, as well. So they are big. And they've had a Germany facility they shut down, and they're opening another one. I don't know. It's a whole bunch of shell game going on with them. Long story short, they're a big company. And they cut off a small part, which relatively is big for us because we like GT. We were hoping to get back into the bike line, independent bike dealers and that kind of thing. And what hurts is, they can the staff, but it also gets rid of all their sponsorships, their teams, and all that kinds of things. So you've heard probably a few of those on the YouTube world circuit of those individuals having a hard time with that. Well, they're all going to, if they haven't already been through the ringer already, through that kind of sponsorship, they should have known this is probably going to happen, because the first thing a company is going to cut is anything that's extensive spending, which is basically sponsors. And they're going to streamline that to the only ones that are actually going to be relevant and make them a quick return. They're all about business. Yeah, yeah, this part, this is where you need to do shots, is to get through it. I actually did a script on this one, on the not today, but the Sunday video that dropped, the chaos going into 2025. And a buddy of mine, John Bradley, came up with the terminology chaos, not just crisis. It is just, he's been in the industry for over 50 years, and he's worked at Trek during the 90s and various other wholesale companies, and like Orbea and WD-40 and all these other companies. He's been around. He has a lot of insights. And when he says this is a crap storm heading, and we're seeing things that maybe little bits of it over the last 40 years, but not all at the same time, it's interesting, to say the least. And very, every time say something like that, you're like, man, I need to take a shot, because this is going to be painful. And it's going to be painful. It's going to be really painful for some companies, some shops, all those things. It's going to be uncomfortable. Will we get through this? Sure, but you don't know where you're going to be, or how you're going to be doing it, or where you're going to be selling. Case in point, Go Guava is a shop in East Coast, Pennsylvania, I think. Watch some of his videos. He had a really good one on tariffs. Give me a little, I'd never had my head around tariffs, and I also read the article in Bustle Retailer, and it's like tariffs just seem super overcomplicated. But he had a good video on that. I've also been watching him because he opened up a shop 9 months ago, and his diversified like so much from his initial thoughts of what the shop was going to be to what it is now. And that's kind of how we're going to continue to go. I use that as an example because that's somebody that's really in the mix and going, okay, what bike lines I'm going to carry? Like, oh, that's not going to work. I need to do this. Oh, I need to do more service on e-bikes. I need to go this direction. A lot of shops have been doing that, including myself. Because initially when I started this whole song and dance is refurbishing road bikes, and that was really it. I was like, I buy a used road bike, fix it all up, and I'd fit it, sell it, and I'd fit it to somebody and give them the warm hug. So providing that good entry-level road bike, that was it. Well, now I'm doing a whole bunch of service. I have to shift, and then I'm doing detailing service, like detailing to the frames, to more specialty services, that's what I meant. Wax and chains, those kinds of things, go in those directions. And, helping people build up bikes and going through those processes. So not that I want to do that, it just definitely shifted to different directions. Oh, and allude to, you're seeing me on YouTube. That also is a different shift. So for me, ironically, the YouTube, and thank you for watching this because you make this channel, therefore, half of my service was from people that saw me on YouTube. Believe it or not. They're like, I want you to work on my bike. And they'll drive it up an hour and a half away to drop off their bike for me to work on it. That's just amazing. So if I'm able to do something like that, it's just one of those things. Hey, Randy, are you talking about service, charging enough for service? I keep my prices low personally because my overhead is pretty much nothing compared to brick and mortar. So I could be a little more flexible there. I make enough what I do need to make, that kind of thing. Some of the independent shops, sometimes they're not charging enough per hour for the per hourly rate. But we look at the corporate stores, and what I've listened to, like some of the corporate stores, and I ask them, I'm friendly with some of them because I've worked with them back in the day. So I'm like, what do you, for this tune-up, for this, like drivetrain, clean cables, and so forth, what's it going to be a ticket on a road bike? And they're like, oh, that's going to be like about $900. And you're like, What? So some of them are pretty expensive, and unfortunately, some of those boutique concept showroom style copied from the auto industry service departments have service writers. There's nothing nothing wrong with service writers at all, but a service writer is really designed to find every little thing, and anything that's partially questionable, give you the option to buy a part that's going to be replaced. That's basically what it is. I mean, yeah, it has some good points to be up front of all the stuff that needs to be done on a bike, but they're really just salespeople trying to upsell, and they do have commission structures at a lot of those shops that they get a commission when they sell X amount of chains, X amount of tires, X amount of, so it is kind of a driving force. So if you can find a shop that doesn't work off commissions at all, that's probably a little better environment to go to, possibly. Maybe not always. Yeah, so when you're looking, to support, and this is the tricky bit with service, because a lot of people are like, they charge too much and this and that. And the problem is I've worked in shops for 35 years. And yes, was never paid appropriate rate for all the things you need to learn to keep doing what you're doing at a high professional level. There's the problem. Unfortunately, the shops in the 2000s couldn't provide an income for those service. So you hit the glass ceiling, and then you need to go find another job, other than cycling, because you just couldn't do it. So there alludes. This is where I think the whole powder keg chaos started, is when they shifted to more of the boutique shops, the concept stores. Truck and Specialized, they really pushed this narrative, and a lot of shops went into it, and some were kind of, in very aggressive markets, were kind of forced-ish or whatever. And they've never played fair. Let's just put it that way. They make it, some people are like, oh, it wasn't like that or what have you. And it's like, well, it may not have been in certain areas, but it was in some. And it's always been that kind of case. But that's where I think the whole snooty environment was cultivated. And then now you're like, nobody wants to go in those stores because they get an attitude, in addition to the only thing that's on the floor is the $5,000 bikes. Which is, I'm not saying all shops are that way. But the independent bike shops, there's a few that are just kept the same family style of warm hug, listen to you, and knew their market, and told their bike dealers that, no, I'm only going to carry what I need to carry, and if that doesn't work with you, I'm just going to find another line. Because they're not coming in to buy the Trek. They're not coming in to buy the Specialized. They're coming in to buy my bike that I have for them available. I mean, yeah, they may want to go to the Trek or Canyon or whatever, but you're probably not going to have that customer for very long anyway. So it's kind of like, it's a community bike shop versus corporate bike shop. So that's a whole different show in itself. I mean, that's a whole different topic in itself. But what alludes to the powder keg to coming into 2025, talking about GT from Pond, and then Rocky Mountain just dropped that they have to reorganize their finances. It's basically comparable to going a bankruptcy under protection in the United States, where basically you tell it basically seizes all the creditors to come after you until you can reorganize. That's what they're doing there. Hopefully they'll come out stronger than they were before. It's a smaller company, and Rocky Mountain has some really cool stuff. I mean, I hate to see them go under. They have a pretty good rich history too. But where the pinch is, and this is where it alludes to, like all the comments, a lot of the comments on that particular video, is the manufacturers are building all those stuff in overseas or whatever. They're still going to do what they do. And the bike shops are going to diversify and work with more service, rely on that, and look more into used, because we already have a huge inventory of used product on Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist and pink bike, and anywhere you want to look, that's a huge surplus because nobody's buying used right now, to buy that inventory without paying any extra costs or roll down on that. Refurbish the stuff, which keeps your staff busy. In addition to, you provide a decent profit when you sell those bikes with a warm hug. And they're also going to be, what, $1,000 cheaper than what's new that's coming out of the line, and actually a little bit older, better quality, and actually more gears. I mean, there's a lot of opinions on that, but you're definitely cultivating that entry-level riders again and giving them a price point to bring into your store, where those entry-level riders, and I've talked about a lot, they need all this stuff. They need the helmet, the gloves, and everything else. But if you keep a price point, lower, then they'll be more intrigued to maybe buy another bike or get their family in the bike. So it's a developing, cultivating, grassroots way of doing business. There's bike shops that chimed into my channel that do service and used bike parts only, and they're killing it. Best year ever. So there lies, that's where a lot of the independent bike shops are going to do that. Trek, Specialized, REI, they don't, well, Trek does used, but in a weird way. They don't put used on the floor. They do the Red Barn direct to consumer. That's where their direct to consumer test pilot was. Then they went from there. But yeah, it's like, yeah, it's where it leads now. Who's going to have the pinch? We've already seen that. It's the wholesalers. Wholesalers like that sell to direct consumers. You're talking about Colorado Cyclists and Planet Cyclery. They bought directly from Taiwan companies, brought in chains and all that stuff, and they had to bring in too much because they were forced to, or they weren't not going to get anything at all, and they went under. So you look at that, and you look at the Pros Closet, same scenario. They snowballed right out of business. Then you're looking at like other companies, like Trek is reducing 40% of their SKUs. Well, that was a big announcement leak, because that really showed how disarray the back end was. Being an inventory manager at shops for several years, dealing with all that portion of it, when you're reducing 40% of your SKUs, that's a huge chunk. They also played the game, not just the Trek stuff, but they would carry all the Shimano chains and SRAM and all the other stuff too. So where that 40%, I'm not sure where it's going to lie. But then again, you do not need 18 different colors on a $250 pair of shoes. I mean, it's just ridiculous. So the shrinkage, some of it's going to be very logical, and some of it's going to be desperately have to, because guess what? They probably can't pay those bills and get any more inventory in anyway. There lies the pinch. And that's where you have these big companies, they take business loans out every year to get inventory and move back and forth. And the interest rates are a little bit higher on those, or if they can't pay them back, the banks are not going to lend them any more money to do the next model years and so forth. There lies another whole aspect, a layer of complete massive crazy. So when you look at all of that, and demand is down, nobody wants to spend that much money. The ones that already did spend that much money are not going to buy a new, $5,000 bike anytime soon, because they already bought one last year or 2 years ago. So you're at a weird standstill. And the only thing that's going to be still going in, there's still people riding. That's the thing. There's still just as many people riding bikes and on the bike paths and doing stuff, and the e-bikes are still doing good, and that kind of thing. So they're going to be relying more on service. We're going to rely more on entry-level stuff. That's where my business has actually been working really well the last 2 years, because even though the COVID did have a dip for me, and I had to change a little bit, but it didn't kill me. It was a softer blow. I knew it was going to come down. A lot of us did. And we were wondering, why did these companies think it was going to be this way for the next 5 to 10 years? Like, they were hoping the gravy train would keep going. It's like massive, massive short seeing, understanding what was going to happen. It was kind of insane. But anyway, yeah, it's one of those deals. Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, Randy, that's a good point. You're a truck dealer. and they dropped all of their brands but their own. Well, you're talking, hey Randy, are you talking about they dropped like the Klein and the Le Mans and Bontrager and that lines that they were carrying, or are they forcing the dealer or having the dealer just carry Trek and your percentage of floor space can only be an X brand, like the 10 to 18% or something weird like that? Because that's what's in, what was intriguing to me when I worked at a bike shop in Michigan is like they're primarily were a Trek dealer, kind of concept store, but they did carry Kona, but they only could carry a certain percentage of Kona and accessories. Everything else had to be, the full Trek enchilada. And granted, they had all the stuff to go with that. And Specialized is, I don't know if Specialized even let anybody wear, have anything else on the line, but Specialized carried a lot of products too, and that kind of thing. They would have also a staff that'd come in. If you were a certain level Specialized dealer, that'd come in and it was a merchandiser and they'd merchandise your store. Like they would rearrange everything to Specialized's perspective and marketing, which was crazy. Thanks for chiming in, Joe. Appreciate it. Take care. Thanks for Happy New Year's to you. Look forward to seeing your content going into the rest of winter here. See how you survive winter. In any case, yeah, it's just kind of crazy where there's a lot of perspectives within this this video where it hit there's a lot of comments, which was insane. I haven't caught up to all of them, and there's some insights that people are putting in are just kind of eye-opening. Because granted, honestly, I mean, I'm a guy in the garage. I worked in shops over the years, big, small, chains, otherwise. I do have my own perspective, but I don't obviously know everything. Not that I know all the perspective. I just know what I've seen in my realm and what I've experienced. And coming up to what's going to happen in 2025, I believe you would probably see there's going to be a struggle. It just has to be. There's just there's no way around it. And how they're going to diversify to keep from failing is going to be very interesting. Trek, with all their retail locations, they're going to rely on a lot of service to help them pump the cash flow. And hopefully they bring in some prices down on bikes at some point, but that doesn't seem to be the case anytime soon, unfortunately. But they do have that retail aspect of it that they can kind of leverage. But they are closing the locations that are not performing. They have been for the last 2 years. Or last year, anyway. Yeah, 2 years. So, and then you look at Specialized with their locations. They don't have as many. Maybe they're a little bit more mindful of where they purchase. So those stores are more higher performance, possibly. So they may not need to shrink there, but they're going to be leveraging, which they obviously showed their hand on that back, I think it was in October when they did a free day of small repairs or something like that to drive more service work, basically what it was. And they had some, charitable underlining of this to make it feel more warm and fuzzy, which really is just a marketing pitch to try to get more service, which is, brilliant. That's what they're really good and known for. But anyway, so they're going to be leveraging that too. Thanks, Scott, for chiming in. I talked about your titanium bike earlier, how cool they are and how long they last. Yeah, Scott's the guy that has the titanium. Really nice light speed. Sorry, I'm coughing. I'm still trying to get this cold over. Yeah, it's good. I've done some improvements to the shop, and I would have done that later, but it slowed down on me. So, and I just kind of had to. I'm like, this is driving me crazy. I'm going to do some more throughout the winter, but also I'm going to be trying to do more interviews, either shop owners, other people in the industry, or have been in the industry. So I've gotten big enough that I can, approach those and have those conversations and like, hey, let's talk about it, kind of like what I did with John Bradley. And some various other of those. I have an interview with Scott too, if you want to check that out in my library, about his ventures of cycling. And it's just, it's one of those things, there's so much to cycling than the Tour de France and the races and all that stuff. That's like the NASCAR of the industry. But the rest of us, we drive the Ford Focuses and, just the normal everyday stuff. And, it's fun to watch the high end for the crashes, but I'm not going to go buy myself a Lamborghini. I just can't afford it. But anyway, that's where I kind of try to move my channel towards that direction of doing more interviews, more topics, more insights. But I'm also going to leveraging tech tips, tools. For example, on my Amazon shop below, I've weekly specials that I've seen that are discounted. There's an Allen set from Wera, it's Wera. Check it out. It's interesting. They're German steel. They have a little bit of different shape to the actual Allen itself. I have a set that I use daily. That's what's on my stand. And then I have the Silco ones that are super expensive. Don't need to get those. But this is kind of a year, if you do work on bikes, you might want to look at something that you use a lot and maybe refresh your tool. Refresh your tool. Refresh some of those tools. Reason being is like Allens, for example, they may wear out and you may not notice they're that worn until you get a new set. And you don't want to ever strip out a head of an Allen bolt, especially if it's one of those unique ones. And it's always good to have a good set of, a fresher set of Allens. And I know it's kind of a lift, but $35 once a year on a good Allen set is well worth the 3 or 4 hours of drilling, tapping, and popping out a bolt, and then you have to go source it because it's a unique, bizarro thing off of a newer bike or older bike or whatever it may be. So, side note on that, check out those. But yeah, and that's kind of the direction to help you with your journey for either in your cycling world. We'll talk about more vintage stuff too, of course. I do have in my possession a Campy Box Tools Vintage. That should all be features individually on each one of those tools if I can figure out what the hell they are. Some of them are very unique and classic, so I'll have to do some research on some of that stuff. But yeah, those are the kinds of things I want to keep that are more fun. And obviously, the industry is going to give me plenty to talk about for topics for the next year. They're not going to have shy of content of who's doing what and what's doing wrong and what's doing good and all that. So hopefully it's more good than bad, but we'll see. It's going to be one of those interesting years going forward for sure. But to recap for 2024, I don't think the industry saw any shining lights in the sense that for like Trek Specialized and Giant and Pond, they're seeing more turmoil coming down the line. It was not the greatest year. What I did see was up was Dick's Sporting Goods, oddly enough. So that kind of tells you that they're doing good. I have to check with my buddies at Big Five Sporting Goods, see if they're doing okay, because they're the more lower end sporting good chain where I used to work for several years. And Canyon, if they release any of their numbers and see if they were up a couple times here and there under this weird stuff. So it'd be interesting to see. It seems like everybody has everything on sale. I know new bikes are hitting the floors for the next model year, which would scare the pants off of me right now, because once those hit the floor, that's when the timer starts ticking to pay for them. I mean, let's put it in perspective. We'll look at it 3 different perspectives. Okay, so let's say the wholesaler, not the wholesaler, but the manufacturer, the ones that are overseas, they're building the stuff and all that, they owe bills for all the materials and so forth that they make all the bike frames and wheels and all that stuff for companies. Then you have the Treks and Specialized, the Pond, that is the wholesaler, manufacturer, ish, that buy into, pay for a whole bunch of bikes to be built and sent overseas to hit the warehouses and then goes into the bike shop. As a bike shop perspective, a lot of these bike companies will give you dealer terms, and the terms probably go up all the way up to Giant owning suppliers. So yeah, the Giant one was interesting because about 2 years ago it was leaked that they were behind on their raw materials invoices, which is same kind of thing. So when you're looking at the bike shop, independent bike shop, and you're like, okay, I look at your numbers, I think I'm going to sell this many bikes, and these are the models I want to carry. You write your order, it's usually in 2 installments, especially for a seasonal bike like mine. This is a little educational piece. Well, you take a certain amount that you're going to carry through winter, like whatever release, November, December, and January. So you think you'll have some bikes, kids' bikes, lower end, that kind of thing, to go through the holidays. But it's not the bulk of your bikes that you bring in. Those invoices, when they hit the floor, when you get them, that's the timer. Then all of a sudden, those invoices are due, and it's usually 3 split terms. Like those will be due in March, April, May. And then you have your spring shipment comes in either February or March, so you have enough time to build them up and put them on the floor. Those are going to be due somewhere between like July, August, September, or something like that. You get the drift, right? You get about a 3-month cushion before you have to start paying on those invoices. But here's the pinch. Comes March, you haven't sold a damn thing. You owe these manufacturers, you owe the host, you owe your brand X dollar. Then you're on the phone like, hey, can I get an extension? Can I put a little money down or whatever? I'm not gonna be able to pay for the full thing. And then they start charging you interest. It's this whole thing. And my dad, even in the 90s, it still exists today. It's like this shell game. And you just like work all these vendors until you got product and keep paying them, that kind of thing. Well, that's what Trek's basing on right now. They owe a lot of money to Giant or somebody specialized, even though they're partially owned by Merida, which is a manufacturer. The Merida, I'm sure, owes a lot of money for somebody else for the raw materials and so forth. So there's this cascade effect. And the biggest pinch, who's going to be holding the bag? Well, if the independent bike dealers say, no, I don't want that product because I'm not going to be selling it and you can't force it on me, go ahead and pull my dealer agreement. Because I'm not going to do that. If they're able to do that and just bring in what they can bring in, and correct me if I'm wrong, anybody out there, please comment below if it's still, this was back in the 90s, so and in the early 2000s, but if it's still today, who's going to be holding the bag is the Trek and the Specialized and Giant and Pond. Therefore, you're seeing them starting to cut fat even more so. So unfortunately, I think somebody's probably going to go up for sale or going to need some serious financial help investment-wise. I mean, Pond has a lot of fat. I mean, they have a lot of companies they can trim back and a lot of salaries they can cut down. Specialized, they have a pretty big backing still, if it's still in play with Merida. Trek is the one that would be the question mark. I know they probably have some pretty good investors, a very solid name, but where's that company gonna go? They build it up, but here's the word on the streets like 4 years ago, so aggressively buying stores, bloating the company to its big size. Weren't they already trying to build themselves up to be sold before? This kind of like in the tea leaves. And again, this is my only opinion. I have nothing heard anything specific or anything about that. But when you look at the little indicators, could be. I mean, and where the downturn in the situation is going to be, quite possibly. So if I was working at a truck store right now, I'd be really paying attention to the chitter chatter and also always be looking for another job. It's just gonna, this is the year, like, always have a backup plan because you do not, even though you may think you're in a good position, including myself, I might be a Walmart cleaner by July. Just saying. So that's what we got. Oh yeah, I'm talking about the e-bike. Okay, yeah, Project HMB. Thank you for chiming in on that. Thank you for joining us. Yeah, we're looking at the e-bike industry boom. That's another whole weird quinkydink. Because it started off and everybody's like, what the hell is this shit? And then they're like, oh, this is the greatest thing ever. Then all of a sudden they're selling it. Then every other company that could put together a motor with wheels that with a crankset built one. So you got a whole bunch of no-name brands. You got even, I think is it Yamaha or Honda? No, one of those motocross companies made their motors now. And then you have KTM and also Gas making motor, like electric assist mountain bikes, which they'd never made mountain bikes before. So you're making all these companies are making e-bikes. And all of a sudden, at some point, that market will slow up because whoever's going to get one has got one. And it's not going to keep the peak demand, and then it's going to go down. Then what happens is we're already starting to see this, and some companies are already starting to pull back, like, oh, we're going to stop making those now because we've missed the curve. So there lies what's Trek and Specialized and Pon that does a lot of e-bikes are going to do with those e-bike companies and lines when there's no more of a demand and the market is flooded. They gassed it out. Words and pen. Yeah, that was a joke. Sorry, bad joke. Any case, it's just, yeah, it's driving a lot of shops. And so the shops, if you're an e-bike shop, what I'd highly suggest is double down on do a whole bunch of service on every e-bike brand, scooter possible, because you're going to be very valuable to those. All those bikes have been sent out. They're going to need motors checked, batteries checked, all those things. There is going to be a service. Go Guava went that direction. As I alluded to earlier before, they're doing a lot more e-bike repairs and so forth. They're actually drawing customers for their shop from an hour or two away to come to their store and do that. Precision e-bike in Fort Collins. Yes, I'm going to give you a shout out, buddy. He does e-bike repairs and so forth. Somebody from 9 News contacted my wife, which is in the weather meteorology. And well, long story short, they knew I was a bike guy, asked me where I get this thing fixed. And I'm like, oh, I don't do those, but I know somebody. Therefore, there lies, it's going to be a whole bunch of service that's going to need to be supported. Some shops are going to do that, but the e-bike shops are only selling e-bikes. That's yeah, you're still selling some e-bikes, but man, you really need to open up that service window so you can actually go a lot more spectrum on that. And also do refurbished, used ones, because I tell you what, I'm not telling anybody to buy an e-bike off of Craigslist or a Facebook Marketplace. There's too many damn weird things that could be wrong with them. And therefore, I would kind of stay away with it unless you get it on a super deal. Or you buy it for somebody that actually refurbishes them. Case in point, kind of like me, a guy in a garage that refurbishes e-bikes, I would buy some of that with a little bit of a guarantee. So there lies the huge e-bike window of that sector of the cycling realm. Yeah, I bet they are. I've been hearing a lot of chatter that the motorcycle and motocross industry, as well as the car industry, is just as much as a ass as a sling as the cycling industry. So I mean, it's not just cycling; it's all outdoor sporting goods. I mean, for the most part, it's just we're really going to have to buckle down and figure out how we're going to just skim by until the market gets stronger for all of us, for whatever market that is. It's not going to be easy, for sure. And yeah, when we do have a gas KTM dealer here in Loveland, Colorado, I was going to go in, and a buddy of mine, he does that type of riding. He's like, oh, I talked to the owner. He'd be more than happy to have you come in and do an interview and stuff. And I just haven't had time. But I was really intrigued, you're making e-mountain bikes, but you're not known as a mountain bike place to go. But you're capturing sales from somebody that's already in a motocross riding, and then they see this mountain bike. See, there's another example of a company trying to take advantage of the e-bike train craze, which it's going to go down. Why? Because Amazon's selling e-bikes left and right. And man, you have that going on with a lot lower price points. Yeah, they might catch your house on fire, but still they're selling them. I mean, it's still happening. You just can't say no to that. It's just how the market's going. So yeah, diversifying is going to be the huge thing. For the smaller shops like mine, and smaller bike shops, we've already been kind of twisting and turning and putting ourselves in a pretzel trying to figure this out. And we're taking advantage of anything that comes in the door or any kind of opportunities that come our direction. We're going to work and double down on that and kind of shy away from the things that may have made us money in the past but are not going to now, just to survive. And yeah, unfortunately, that's sometimes cutting staff a little bit, cutting down your size. And that was, man, the early 2000s, everybody was shrinking their floor spaces of the retail like in a half. Like, oh, we don't need that big retail space anymore because we just can't afford that rent. Or if you own the building, if you own that building and cut it in half and you rent the other side out, I mean, at least Cyclery, he chopped that location in Loveland down like 3 times. It's like, oop, shorter. And, another location. But it's like to sustain, it's like, well, the money is not supporting that. That is everywhere. And for me, luckily enough, I mean, I can't really expand, but it's good because I can't really put my neck out there too far. I'm not going to do brick and mortar again if I can avoid it. And I can do everything what I'm doing now in the circumference of a 2+ car garage. And I do have a nice shop. It's just as nice as any shop I've worked in any other brick and mortar store. I have a fit area, which is just as similar to any other bike shop that does fitting. Except for the high-end dynamic ones. I don't have the cameras and dots and all. I just do a static fit. And then you're looking behind me, I just cleaned out a corner and boom, okay, this is my YouTube studio. Like, that's it, or social media influence studio, whatever. But that's the way you're looking at diversifying. It's like, for me, yeah, YouTube is, thank you again for watching me to make this channel, because this is what's provided me an income from either driving more service and sales. Some people have seen bikes that are like, oh, I'm going to buy that because I saw you do it. I saw a video of you doing the actual tune-up on it. I mean, they know what they're getting, and that's what the initial intent was. But now I'm getting people that wants to do service, and they see the detail that I do, and they're willing to wait to me to filter it in and put it in my mix and my schedule and that kind of thing. And it's like, it's not a 24-hour turn, but they're getting the highest quality tune-up that one can get. That's the sell, right? That's the benefit. That's the warm hug. If you need a fit on it, I'll fit you on it. I mean, that's fine. We'll go over those, fit points and contacts and talk about that too. Included with the tune-up, included with the bike sale, where a lot of the bike shops need to think about doing that because that's the opportunity to give more of a better experience for the customer. In addition to, it doesn't take you very long to do a little quick fit, like 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and you're talking to the customer, and like half the time they end up buying something. I don't have hardly any accessories to sell, but that's the opportunity to like, oh, well, do you need a new set of gloves or a helmet, or maybe you want to get it a clipless? We did that in the 90s. Free, it was just included, the fit. I wish I'd included the fit with used bikes or tune-ups, because I mean, how many of you out there have bought bikes in the last 20 years and not been fitted to the bike? Even what blows my freaking mind, you walk into a Trek store or a Specialized store, corporate stores, you walk in, I'm gonna buy that $5,000 bike, doesn't matter what it is, and they're not gonna really fit you to it. They eyeball it, oh, that looks good. Oh, and for Specialized, like, oh, we have like this 300 something fit thing you can buy. We'll give you a little discount since you bought the bike from us, but still, wow. I mean, just a static fit would go miles. Just to throw it out there for you guys who are watching that work in bike shops. Oh, thanks, Scott, for chiming in. Oh, yeah, but. By bicycle shop, Yamaha's discontinuing the e-bikes, but I think they're still making the motors for somebody. I'll have to read that article again. Very interesting part on that. And yeah, e-bikes are not for everybody, but you can't deny the market, how it's changed the market. It's here to stay. It's not going away, for sure. Scott, thanks for chiming in again. Yeah, I try to do quick repairs. when I can, but the whole concept for me in the garage is all like appointment based, which works, and it seems to work really well. The U.S. market not is necessarily the most important market for Trek and Specialized. Good point. Important to take. U.S. the bike shops are not a priority. Oh, yeah. Well, when you look at Specialized and Trek, they're a global company as well as Pond, right? So you got all these different markets, and Pond has the stronger European market as well as Canyon. I mean, Canyon started off in Europe and did really well. And yeah, it's even though the Trek it's the United States company and they were born and bred and built out of the United States, they're doing a lot of markets. It's like, man, that's another perspective right there. Because again, I'm very eccentric. Like I only live here, so this is only my own experiences. But please share in the comments below if you're watching this on the replays. Like if it's happened to you in your neck of the woods, or what's going on in New Zealand. Somebody chimed out, was like, oh, we lost some shops there, or Australia, which I have some followers, and also in Europe. A lot of you guys like to see what us Yankees are doing over here across the pond. Yeah, we don't know what we're doing over here, so shocker. not to scare the hell out of you, but yeah, we do not know what the hell is going on. But yeah, we're trying to get through it. I'm just trying to provide some points of what I'm doing that helps, and community-based stuff is the thing. That's where I'm going to be looking into going into 2025. Back to that point. For me, I've always been a part of the MS ride, but I've also branched out to a couple other different rides. There's the charity event based, and I'm trying to leverage more of that to get more of my exposure of my shop of what I do, but also it's the right thing to do. And there lies the community aspect of it. I mean, if they see me wrenching on some bikes, and I did actually bring in some really cool customers with some really nice bikes to work on when I'm doing these events. Like, oh, I'm going to have you tune up my moots. I'm like, sweet, this is awesome. It's like those kinds of those experiences, and plus you're doing community things. It's like a lot of the shops where Trek and Specialized, they do a little bit of it, but it falls flat. I mean, it just kind of falls flat because I don't know, it just doesn't seem like they really, really, really want to do it. So when you have like the bike MS or some states, I had a long meeting with the director, Lindsay, here in Colorado, and she's newer to the MS, but not to charity events. And she went to one in one of the South Carolina. I apologize what state it was, but apparently they had like the bike shops there. It was like a community event. I mean, it was like they didn't have any problems getting bike shops to sign up for it. I mean, they were like, this is a thing. And when they did their deal, they all were like buddies and community and other shops. And it was like this big, it used to be like that here, but they've some reason for the last 10 years had super hard time getting people to volunteer their time. Granted, this is in June, in the busiest month, and we're all not have enough employees. It's just like one of those pain points. But it's something that if a shop owner, and if you really could see the value of it, and that's what conversations I was having with Lindsay, is like, if you could bring in a value, not just at the event, if you could bring in a value like training rides that incorporate your customer base as well as the MS riders, and other activities as such, and do maybe social media video rolls or shop featured stuff to really kind of make it valid for the bike shops. Like, okay, I'm actually getting some huge PR off of this, not just doing it on the day of the event, but the leading up to, because there's a huge lead up to it. I mean, they're getting all those people that are riding, they're sending out like, these are the training ride areas. This is where you pick up your packets. This is all these things. And if you add that community kind of thing, you get all of that investment or exposure prior to the actual event. And the event is just showing up, having one person there with a box of tools and some tubes, and let's do this. And it's one of those things where I see, like I was trying to, the thing is here's the hitch. My dad was the bike shop coordinator for the MS Society for good 15 years. So when he passed away in 2005, it's been kind of like the bike shops have been shuffled around, and he really understood the pain points, but he also had that ability, being very charismatic to talk everybody into doing it. Like, no, you can't get out of it. You're doing it, that kind of thing. But anyway, so going back to where the future of 2025 for local bike shops like mine, small, big, or otherwise, community feel, community events, double down on those things, double down on service. People are like, oh, we're already doing that. It's like, there's so much more you can do. And also provide used. Now I've mentioned this before to a lot. It's like, if you're a Trek dealer, let's just say Trek dealer, and you do a trade-in event, you sell all the other bikes that are not Treks, you just fix them up, throw them on eBay or whatever, get rid of them. But you take those Treks that are your same brand, it doesn't matter what brand it is, put it right next to the same brand. Wouldn't you think that a Trek 5200, which I have a frame over here, 5200 with Ultegra componentry on it. It might be 15 years old because I did the Mandones. The 5200, even if it is 20 years old, like a 2005, wow, 20 years old, that's crazy, it's blowing my mind. With Ultegra componentry, compared on that, if it's in good condition and tuned up, right next to the first level entry road bike from Trek, which is what, 1500, 12 to 1500, and you can sell that 5200 for 700 with Ultegra componentry. There you go. Get that inventory. That's what's going to sell. That's what's going to move. And guess what? You can sell that online. You can sell it on eBay. You can sell. There's no contract agreement with those dealers. Whatever you sell used, you can sell it online, unless that's changed, which it shouldn't, because they're the ones that are direct to consumers too. So, and I'm sure you're not getting as much as a kickback as what they say you're going to get a kickback when they do that direct consumer to your customers in your neighborhood. You may be a little bit of a win, but it's probably not as much as a win as you want, right? Anyway. I'll bring back the Century Ride. Yeah, the fun rides. That's where, I mean, there's a lot of, I mean, I'm in Colorado. So sorry. I'm in Colorado. We have races. We have all sorts of rides. We have club rides. We have, you name a ride, we have a ride for it. I mean, it's just there. A lot of markets may not have that. We're just very lucky to have that. But my goodness, you have those good club rides. There's one like a good gravel club ride here. It's a no drop ride. They meet on Tuesday nights. I just can't make it on Tuesdays. But for me, if I was really needing that extra exposure and customers, I would go on those group rides. I'd be like, sorry, I have to go tonight and go ride 2 hours and hang out with some gravel people just to show up. And, I was like, hey, yeah, I'm from, just to introduce myself as an introduction. And it doesn't have to be your own shop ride. And some of those shop rides are too aggressive. So be more of the community rides. Like the MS ride is like a 2-day ride event. It's like adult playground on the first night. It's funny because it starts at CU this year. It goes to Greeley, which if you don't know, it's directly east. But Greeley has a Stampede Days, or is that the Cheyenne Days? No, Stampede Days at Greeley, which is a big old cowboy thing. But they have like concerts and stuff. It's really a big deal. Well, the funny thing is, they're going to be shuttling people from the MS, I think, they're thinking about it, from that night over to the actual Stampede. I mean, talking about a fun event, right? It's like, okay, I'm going to go ride, I'm charity, bringing out money for help people with MS, I'm going to go to this event and have it overnight at the big old hoedown thing that's going on in Greeley. Well, it just sounds like, and it's our 40th year anniversary, so that's pretty fun stuff. So yeah, so events like that, you know, I think are really going to help cultivate. The thing is the people are out there, they're riding bikes, they're not going away. They have bikes, they're just looking into more or less expensive used possibly, and they're going to need stuff worked on, especially if they got a bike in the last 10 years, it sure shit has something specialty on it that's specifically, unless you want to buy the $200 worth of tools to work on it once, or you can take it into the shop and have it installed for 25 bucks. You know, so that's another perspective of it. All righty, getting close to probably wrapping this up and ending the year of 2024. I do have, let's see what else. Yeah. So 2024 was a struggle-ish. Found my path. A lot of shops are finding their paths too. Big brands are not doing so great. They're continually going to not do so great. Hope for the best for them, but they kind of made their bed. And bike shops are going to prevail. I mean, the smaller ones have a good opportunity to prevail in going into 2025 if they can not get too underwater, no longer drinking the Kool-Aid, be their shop, be their niche, do what they do best. And if they keep that close, and you know, hopefully those brands, and apparently with that Go Guava, he had a video about Giant actually being supportive to the independent bike dealer, which is kind of a head turner in a more of a better warm hugger way, but we'll see. But I would say the smaller niche lines like Kona, smaller build companies like Parlay out on the East Coast that do carbon or titanium. I mean, you can have some of those higher end bikes, but my goodness, I mean, I don't know, for me, let's think about this. Like, would I want, if I had, which I don't, but if I had $5,000 to spend on a bike for myself, I didn't want to buy it with used, I didn't want to deal with that. I wanted something new. Would you go with a Trek as a mass production, or would you maybe think about getting a Moots? Titanium. I mean, I'm not going anywhere fast. I just want the thing to be fun to ride and comfortable, and maybe have a little bit of head turn. You know, like, ooh, look at that. That's kind of cool. Or a Parlay. You know, nice carbon if you want to do a carbon. You know, they have custom builds, and they also have, you know, a production run. There's a couple other ones in Colorado too to consider. I mean, if you're going to pay that money, I don't know. I'd be more. I'd go towards more niche than a Trek or a Specialized. But that's me. But yeah, it's one of those things. I mean, then you have those people that, like, they've had a Trek, they've always had a Trek, they always will buy a Trek. That's it. And same thing with Specialized, and they have that brand loyalty. And a lot of it stems from, guess what? A lot of it now stems from the used market, because if they buy a used Trek, for example, and they had a good experience and it fits them well, if they're going to buy new, the likelihood, or at least they're going to check first, will be a Trek bike dealer, that kind of thing. So there alludes, the used market is just ready to be, it's prime for the picking. Let's just put it that way. I mean, there's been a lot of naysayers and all that, but you look, I mean, you look like, well, what about Pro's Closet? Well, Pro's Closet they didn't really bring their price points down. All their stuff was still pretty high, and they limited how far they would go back on the models they would bring in. So they kind of left that market completely open and not dived into it. And that hurt them, because they were competing against brand new stuff that was discounted. Well, what if you're bringing in, pick up yourself a $300 carbon bike, tune it up, put some parts in it, turn around and sell for $699. You're still selling it under $1,000. And the first carbon bike in the new line, you tell me what it is. Is it $2,000? Full carbon? $3,000 for a decent one? When you can provide a used one that's somewhat similar, and actually you can actually work on it. None of this internal routing stuff, all that stuff that makes everybody go crazy. Anyway, Yeah. You wear any eyeglasses, mirror, and the best you are being a dork. Yep. I'm the biggest dork of all. Dad jokes all day. Just ask my daughter. So in any case. Well, there's 2024. A lot to look forward in 2025. Thanks for hanging out with me. Thanks for being part of this channel. If you're watching this on a replay, anything, put it in the comments below. Really appreciate it. This whole chaos video is kind of crazy. It is true. We're in some, I don't know where, I don't know where I'm going in a sense, because there's going to be some interesting, fun things, and I'm going to try to push narrative and do really good. Oh yeah, Linsky, Lightspeed, endurance, geometries. There's so many of those smaller brands, and they're still technically kind of big, but not big. They're great. But in any case, here we are. 2025. I hope everybody has a wonderful New Year's Eve. I hope tomorrow, either today or tomorrow, get out for a ride. Today is really chilly for me. I mean, that's still in the 40s in the garage, so that's Fahrenheit. And yeah, I better go back inside and warm up and get some warmer coffee in any case. Hope you guys have a great time. I should be here Shop Talk Tuesday next week. Check out my Amazon shop below for the stuff that I use in the shop. There's also t-shirts like this that you can find down there below. Yep, plugs to keep me going. But in any case, but at the end of the day, thank you for watching. I really love doing this. This is something that's really been a nice, great extension to working on bikes and sharing it with the community and listening to all of those that are either in it or riding it or part of it and around the world. It's mind-blowing to me. And I do really appreciate it. And this is my full second year of doing the YouTube thing. And oh, here's a teaser. I'm building a separate channel. And I'm building up the actual content for it. A couple have been released. It's basically, I'm taking the show, This Old Bike, and putting it in its own space. It just feels like it needs to be in its own space. So it'll be bikes featured that 10 plus years old, as well as tools. And it's live now, but I'm not really gonna roll it out in probably about a month or two when I have a decent library of content. Some of it will be repurposed, but I have a backlog, and there lies the weird YouTube algorithm. So you kind of have to be more consistent and keep the content. And I was going in a couple different ways, and kind of sabotaged me a little bit. I think, maybe not. I don't know. But I figured it'd be a good place to have its own place. So it's, if you like content like this, you can stay here. If you like both, you can do both. If you just want to see old stuff, you can go there. So there lies my pitch. Any case, a little sneak peek on that. Thanks for hanging out with me. Next Tuesday, yeah, I get to be a year older. It's my birthday. Any case, thanks again for hanging out with me. Until next time, if it's nice in your neck of woods, please go for a ride. Any comments below is more warmly appreciated about any of the topic, any insights you can bring, either from a cyclist to a bike shop to a wholesale or previous adventurer. Any case, thanks again for hanging out, and I hope you all have a wonderful new year. Until next time, toodaloo. I never say toodaloo. That's weird.